Definitions. First, we're going to hear what the types of mass atrocities are. Brought to you by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which is an academic endeavor. Crimes against humanity. Any of the following acts, when committed as part of a widespread or systemic attack directed against any civilian population: murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, imprisonment, torture, rape, and other gender-based or sex crimes, group-based prosecution, enforced disappearance, apartheid, and other inhumane acts of similar character, intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body, mental health, or physical health. Ethnic cleansing. The term ethnic cleansing refers to the forced removal of an ethnic group from a territory. A United Nations Commission of Experts investigating the former Yugoslavia defined it as rendering an area ethnically homogeneous by using force or intimidation to remove persons of given groups from the area. Unlike crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes, ethnic cleansing is not recognized as a standalone crime under international law. However, the practice of ethnic cleansing may constitute genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. Genocide. It's defined as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Mass atrocities, instances of large-scale systemic violence against civilian populations. Although the term mass atrocities has no formal legal definition, it usually refers to genocide. As defined above, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and ethnic cleansing. Mass killing, the deliberate actions of armed groups, including but not limited to the state security forces, rebel armies, and other militias that result in the deaths of at least 1,000 non-combatant civilians targeted as part of a specific group over a period of 1 year or less. War crimes are serious violations of international humanitarian law and occur in the state of armed conflict. The Rome Statute lists numerous acts that may constitute war crimes, including attacks on civilians, forcibly recruiting and using child soldiers, and destruction of educational and religious institutions. Countries. 30 countries at highest risk of genocide worldwide in 2022 and 3. Pakistan, Yemen, Myanmar, Chad, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Afghanistan, India, Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Guinea, Zimbabwe, Congo Republic, Central African Republic, Thailand, the DR Congo, Uganda, Mozambique, Burundi, Indonesia, China, Mali, Tanzania, Libya, Egypt, Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Iran. Country case studies. Afghanistan. The Taliban are persecuting and committing other egregious human rights violations against ethnic and religious minorities, women and girls, and perceived opposition groups since retaking control of Afghanistan in August 2021. ISIS-K, an Islamic State affiliate, have also systematically targeted ethnic and religious minorities, particularly the Hazara community. Growing restrictions on targeted groups within the country put civilians at great risk. Armenia. Between 1915 and autumn of 1916, the Ottoman Empire arrested, deported, conducted mass killings and created conditions intended to cause widespread death among the country's Armenian Christian citizens, most of whom were living in the territory of modern-day Turkey. Between 664,000 and 1.2 million Armenian men, women, and children died in the genocide. Bangladesh emerged as a secular democracy in 1971 after a bloody independence war from Pakistan was marked by mass killings by the Pakistani army and its collaborators. Our 2017 report examines scenarios in which Bangladesh could plausibly experience large-scale systemic attacks on civilians and explores ways to help avert those. Bosnia and Herzegovina, an estimated 100,000 people were killed during the conflict in Bosnia between 1992 and 95, including the July 1995 genocide of 8,000 Bosnian Muslims from Srebrenica. Learn about what happened, and you can learn on this website. Burma. Our Bearing Witness Trips reports detail the genocide committed against Burma's Muslim Rohingya minority in 2017, as well as threats to them and other religious communities in Burma. Cambodia. Between 1975 and 1979, Cambodia's Khmer Rouge subjected the country's citizens to forced labor, persecution, and execution in the name of the regime's ruthless agrarian ideology. Almost 2 million people, approximately 1/3 of the country's population, died in the killing fields. Learn more about that also. Cameroon. When English-speaking civilians began protesting discriminatory government policies in 2016, government security forces cracked down violently. Now these forces and armed separatist groups from the English-speaking population are fighting. Each side is targeting civilians it perceives as disloyal. More than 6,000 people have been killed and over 600,000 internally displaced since 2017. Central African Republic. What began in 2013 as political violence initiated by rebel groups opposing the government of the Central African Republic took on a religious dimension, with groups and individuals being targeted because of their Christian or Muslim identity. China. The Chinese government is systematically persecuting the Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities on the basis of their religion and ethnicity. The museum is gravely concerned that the Chinese government may be committing genocide against the Uyghurs. There is also reasonable basis to believe that the government of China is committing crimes against humanity. Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire has a history of crimes against humanity and other mass atrocities, particularly during electoral periods. There were many concerns in the run-up to the 2020 election where violence ultimately was prevented, but thousands were forced to flee and 85 people were killed. Political actors within Côte d'Ivoire must maintain short-term peace and stability while also addressing long-term grievances, democracy, and risks for renewed violence. Democratic Republic of the Congo. More than 5 million civilians have died in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in a series of complex wars and conflicts. Most have died from preventable diseases as a result of the collapse of the infrastructure, lack of food and health care, and displacement. Ethiopia. A civil war started in November of 2020, and Ethiopia's Tigray region has devolved into a brutal conflict that threatens the well-being of millions. The conflict includes multiple armed actors, several of whom are alleged to be committing mass atrocities. From the beginning of the war, witnesses reported the intentional targeting of civilians, often along ethnic lines. Indonesia is currently experiencing an increase in political tensions, extremism, and violent conflict in the Papua region. There are early warning signs of large-scale violence against civilians. Violence between indigenous Papuan supporters of Papua's independence movement and the Indonesian government has intensified and is further complicated by the increasing fragmentation within indigenous Papuan groups, as well as increasing migration into Papua. In 2014, in Iraq, the self-proclaimed Islamic State conducted a violent campaign against civilians in northern Iraq, targeting ethnic and religious minorities and committing genocide against the Yazidi people. The violence displaced more than 800,000 people and resulted in the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians. Mali is currently facing numerous armed conflicts. Violence between herders and farmers in the country's central regions continue to escalate, taking on an increasingly ethnic tone. Mali has faced severe political instability in recent years, including coups in August 2020 and May 2021. Rwanda. In 1994, between 500,000 and 1 million Rwandans were massacred in a genocide when a Hutu extremist-led government launched a plan to wipe out the country's entire Tutsi minority and any others who opposed their policies. South Sudan in 2013, just 2 years after South Sudan became an independent country, a civil war erupted. Almost 400,000 people were killed and nearly 4 million displaced. Today, the country faces great challenges as it seeks to implement a fragile peace deal and resolve ongoing ethnic conflicts. Sudan. Since the 1950s, the Arab-dominated government of Sudan has tried to impose its control over populations from the nation's more culturally, religiously, and linguistically diverse regions outside the capital. More than 2.5 million civilians have been killed in a succession of brutal conflicts across many regions, including genocide in Darfur against the Fur, Zaghawa, and Masalit ethnic groups between 2003 and 2005. Syria. Since March 2011, the conflict in Syria has cost the lives of nearly 500,000 people, displaced millions more, and involved numerous atrocities and crimes against humanity. Our reports outline the atrocities the Syrian regime is committing against its own people and the threats that remain for those living in the country. Ukraine. Since launching its military invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Russian forces have perpetuated attacks against civilian populations. There is a reasonable basis to conclude that these attacks constitute war crimes and crimes against humanity. In justifying the attack, Russian President Vladimir Putin has misrepresented and misappropriated Holocaust history to be claiming falsely that democratic Ukraine needs to be denazified. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's ruling party has used mass atrocities against civilians to repress political opponents and consolidate power since the country gained independence from the United Kingdom in 1980. There's a lot. Check out the website. None of this is new. Wars, crimes against humanity, genocide has been going on since we stood upright. These are just some of the things. And the website needs to be updated for the current atrocities being committed in Gaza and the atrocity that was committed in the beginning by Hamas. Two wrongs don't make a right. Learn history. It's been going on forever.